Hello Army, welcome back to my channel. If you were watching footage from BTS's recent MetLife Stadium shows, or if you've been scrolling through fan accounts documenting these performances, you've probably already noticed something that's been generating quite a bit of conversation among fans over the past day or so. Jimin, who has been sporting that signature blonde hairstyle for months now, throughout basically the entire European and early American legs of the Arirang World Tour, showed up with a noticeably different look for this particular show, and fans have been buzzing about exactly what prompted this sudden change. Let's talk through everything we know about this hair transformation, what it actually looks like, and what the broader context might tell us about why this change happened right now. So let's start by talking about what fans have actually observed and described regarding this new look. According to multiple fan accounts sharing footage and commentary from the MetLife Stadium shows, Jimin appeared with his hair shifted away from that signature blonde color he's maintained for months, moving toward a noticeably darker, cooler tone shade. Some fans have described this new color as something closer to a cool-toned gray-brown or a dark cool brown, rather than a straightforward black, giving his long, layered hairstyle this softer, more dimensional appearance under the stadium lighting. Other descriptions have leaned more toward calling it a silver tone specifically, which gave him what many fans described as a fresh, striking new visual that immediately became a talking point across social media. Let's think about the broader context here, because understanding just how long he's maintained that previous blonde look really helps illustrate why this change felt so significant to fans watching closely. Jimin has maintained that blonde hairstyle for several months now, dating back through the earlier European stops on this Arirang World Tour, including cities like Madrid, Brussels, London, Munich, and Paris, all the way through the historic World Cup final halftime show performance we've discussed extensively on this channel, and continuing right up through the beginning of this current American touring leg. Given just how consistently he's maintained that specific look across so many different major moments throughout this touring cycle, seeing him switch things up specifically for these MetLife Stadium shows understandably caught fans' attention in a genuinely significant way. Let's talk about why a change like this tends to generate this level of conversation within the fandom specifically. Anyone who's followed K-pop idols for any length of time knows just how much attention gets paid to hairstyle and color changes throughout an artist's career, particularly during major touring cycles or comeback eras. These visual choices often become deeply associated with specific eras or moments within an artist's career, almost functioning as visual markers that fans use to organize and remember different periods of an ongoing tour or promotional cycle. Given how strongly that blonde look has already become associated with this entire Arirang era specifically, including that now iconic World Cup halftime show appearance, any deviation from that established look naturally draws significant attention and speculation from fans trying to understand exactly what prompted the change. Now, let's address the question that's probably on a lot of your minds, which is exactly why this change happened at this specific point in the tour. I want to be genuinely upfront with you here, because I think it's important to distinguish between confirmed information and fan speculation when we're discussing something like this. As of putting together this video, there hasn't been any official statement from Jimin himself, from BTS collectively, or from HYB specifically explaining the exact reasoning behind this particular hair change. What we're working with is fan observation and reaction to the visual change itself, rather than any confirmed explanation from official sources. That said, let's think through some of the more common reasons why K-pop idols typically make these kinds of styling adjustments partway through an extended touring cycle, because it can help us understand some of the likely possibilities here, even without official confirmation. First, there's simply the practical reality of hair health and maintenance during an extended touring schedule. Maintaining a bleached blonde color for months on end, especially during a physically demanding touring schedule that involves constant styling, heat treatment, and the general wear and tear that comes with performing night after night across multiple continents, can take a genuine toll on hair health over time. It's entirely possible that this shift toward a darker, cooler tone represents at least partly a practical decision to give his hair a bit of a break from that sustained blonde treatment, while still maintaining a striking, visually interesting color rather than simply returning to a completely natural, unstyled look. Second, there's the possibility of this being a deliberate styling choice specifically tied to this particular stretch of the tour, perhaps intended to provide some visual variety and freshness partway through what's already been an incredibly long and extensive touring cycle. We've talked extensively on this channel about how each stop on this tour has often brought its own slight variations in styling and presentation, and it's entirely plausible that this shift represents exactly that kind of intentional visual evolution, giving fans something new to look forward to and discuss as the tour continues its extensive run across additional cities and countries. Third, it's worth considering that sometimes these kinds of styling changes are tied to specific promotional considerations we might not have full visibility into yet, whether that's connected to upcoming content, specific performances, or other professional considerations that haven't been publicly announced at this point. Without official confirmation, we genuinely can't say for certain whether this specific change connects to anything beyond simply refreshing his look partway through the tour, but it's worth acknowledging that possibility as we discuss this topic. Let's shift toward talking about how fans have actually been reacting to this new look, because the response has generally been genuinely positive from what's been shared across social media. Many fans have expressed enthusiasm about the new color, describing it as giving his features a different kind of visual dimension compared to the blonde look, with several specifically praising how the cooler, darker tone works with his long, layered hairstyle under concert lighting conditions. There's also been plenty of the usual lighthearted fan debate that tends to accompany any hairstyle change like this, with different fans expressing preferences for either the blonde look he's maintained for months or this newer, darker alternative. Let's think about the broader pattern of hair and styling changes throughout Jimin's career more generally, because this isn't exactly the first time we've seen him make a notable shift in appearance partway through an era or tour. Throughout his career with BTS, he's cycled through numerous different hair colors and styles, each often becoming associated with specific eras, comebacks, or tours. This history of frequent styling changes suggests that shifts like this one are simply a normal, expected part of how he approaches his overall visual presentation throughout an extended career, rather than necessarily signaling anything particularly unusual or significant beyond just typical stylistic evolution. Let's also touch on the timing of this specific change within the broader context of the American leg of this tour. Coming right after those historic first 2 nights at MetLife Stadium, which we discussed extensively in our previous video, this styling change arrives at a moment when the tour is continuing to make its way through additional major American stadium stops, including venues like Gillette Stadium in Massachusetts, M&T Bank Stadium in Baltimore, and additional shows continuing through Texas, Toronto, Chicago, and Los Angeles over the following weeks. Given that this tour still has a significant number of American stops remaining, it's entirely possible this represents the beginning of a new visual chapter that we'll continue seeing throughout the remainder of this particular touring leg. Let's also spend some time thinking about the broader visual and thematic considerations that might factor into styling decisions like this throughout an extended tour. Touring productions of this scale often involve careful consideration of how an artist's overall look interacts with stage lighting, camera work for any officially filmed content, and the overall visual coherence of the show as a complete package. A shift toward a cooler, more silver or gray-toned color specifically might interact differently with stage lighting compared to a warmer blonde tone, potentially creating different visual effects during specific moments of the show, whether that's during more intimate, emotionally driven segments or during higher energy production moments involving specific lighting effects. Let's also touch on how this kind of mid-tour styling change fits within the broader pattern we've discussed extensively throughout this entire comeback year regarding Jimin's various visual presentations across different major moments and platforms. We've talked about his distinctive World Cup halftime show costume, his various styling choices throughout different stops on this world tour, and now, this notable shift in his hair color specifically. Each of these visual choices tends to generate its own wave of fan discussion and analysis, reflecting just how closely fans track and engage with every detail of his overall presentation throughout this incredibly eventful period. Let's think about what this specific change might mean for how fans document and remember this particular stretch of the tour going forward. Given how strongly that blonde look had already become visually associated with earlier stops on this tour, including that historic World Cup performance, this shift toward a different color specifically at MetLife Stadium creates this kind of natural dividing line within the broader visual narrative of the tour, potentially marking this American touring leg as its own distinct visual chapter compared to the earlier European stops and that World Cup appearance. Let's also spend some time discussing the practical realities of maintaining a specific hair color throughout an extended touring schedule like this one, because I think it's worth appreciating just how much ongoing maintenance a look like sustained blonde hair actually requires. Bleaching and maintaining a blonde color, particularly one bright and consistent enough to photograph and film well under professional stage lighting and camera conditions, typically requires regular touch-ups and specific maintenance routines to prevent the color from looking uneven, brassy, or otherwise compromised over an extended period. Given just how demanding this touring schedule has already proven to be, spanning multiple continents and an extensive list of major stadium shows, it's entirely reasonable that maintaining this specific styling routine throughout the entire tour might present genuine practical challenges, potentially factoring into a decision to shift toward a different approach partway through this extended touring cycle. Let's also touch on the broader significance of hairstyling as a form of creative expression and visual storytelling within the K-pop industry more specifically, because it's worth appreciating just how much thought and consideration typically goes into these kinds of decisions, even when they might appear as relatively minor details from a casual observer's perspective. Within an industry that places such significant emphasis on visual presentation and aesthetic coherence, styling changes like this one are rarely simply arbitrary or unconsidered decisions. Whether the specific motivation here turns out to be practical hair maintenance, deliberate visual refreshment, or some other consideration we don't yet have full visibility into, it's reasonable to assume this change reflects some level of intentional decision-making rather than being purely incidental. Let's think about what we might expect going forward as this tour continues through its remaining American stops and eventually moves on to additional international dates throughout the rest of this extensive touring cycle. If this darker, cooler tone look represents a more permanent shift for this particular stretch of the tour, we'd likely expect to see this same general styling maintained across the upcoming shows in Massachusetts, Maryland, Texas, and beyond. Alternatively, if this turns out to be a more temporary or specific choice tied to these particular MetLife Stadium shows, we might see him return to that familiar blonde look at subsequent stops, or potentially even continue evolving his look further as the tour progresses. Let's also spend some time discussing why fans place such significant value on documenting and discussing these kinds of visual changes throughout an ongoing tour, beyond just simple aesthetic appreciation. For dedicated fans following this entire touring cycle closely, these kinds of visual details become part of the broader narrative and memory of the tour itself, helping distinguish specific shows and stops from one another within what's already been an incredibly extensive, multi-continent touring schedule. Being able to look back and remember specific stylistic choices tied to particular shows or stops helps create this richer, more detailed collective memory of the entire tour experience, something that becomes increasingly valuable as the tour continues generating so many different memorable moments across its extensive run. Let's also touch on how this kind of styling discussion tends to interact with the broader social media conversation happening around major concert stops more generally. Fan accounts specifically dedicated to documenting and discussing these kinds of visual details, whether that's specific outfits, hairstyles, or other presentation choices, have become a genuinely significant part of how the broader fandom processes and shares information about ongoing tours. This kind of detailed visual documentation and discussion helps ensure that even fans who weren't able to attend these specific shows in person still get to experience and engage with these smaller but meaningful details from each individual stop on the tour. Let's think about the broader significance of this entire conversation within the context of everything else we've covered throughout this incredibly eventful comeback year. We've discussed his World Cup halftime show costume, his custom jersey's remarkable auction journey, his various brand partnerships, and now, this hair color change specifically tied to these historic MetLife Stadium shows. Each of these different threads, while individually perhaps relatively minor in the grand scheme of his overall career, collectively paint this incredibly detailed, comprehensive picture of just how closely and consistently fans continue engaging with literally every aspect of his ongoing activities throughout this remarkable period. Let's also spend some time thinking about what kind of additional visual content and documentation we might expect to see emerging from this particular hair change over the coming days, as more fan footage and official content potentially continues surfacing from these MetLife Stadium shows and subsequent tour stops. Given how much attention this specific change has already generated, it's reasonable to expect continued discussion and analysis as fans get additional opportunities to see this new look across different angles, lighting conditions, and performance contexts throughout the remainder of this touring leg. Let's wrap up by recapping everything we've discussed today regarding this notable hair color change. After maintaining a blonde hairstyle for several months throughout the European leg of the Arirang World Tour and the historic FIFA World Cup final halftime show performance, Jimin appeared with a noticeably different, darker, and cooler-toned hair color for the MetLife Stadium shows in East Rutherford, New Jersey. While there's been no official statement confirming the specific reasoning behind this change, fans have generally responded positively to the new look, with plenty of discussion and speculation surrounding potential practical or stylistic reasons behind the shift. Whether this represents a more permanent change moving forward through the remainder of the American touring leg, or a more temporary adjustment specific to these particular shows, remains to be seen as the tour continues through its extensive remaining schedule. This entire conversation really does illustrate just how closely fans continue tracking and engaging with every single detail of Jimin's ongoing activities throughout this incredibly eventful comeback year, even details as seemingly small as a hair color change partway through an extensive touring cycle. It's exactly this kind of dedicated attention and engagement that continues generating conversation and content around literally every aspect of his career, well beyond just the major headline-generating milestones we've discussed extensively on this channel throughout this remarkable period. Thank you so much for watching this video all the way through. If you enjoyed this breakdown of Jimin's new hair color at MetLife Stadium, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update like this one in the future. Drop a comment down below letting me know which look you personally prefer, that signature blonde he's maintained for months, or this newer, darker cool tone color, and if you have any theories about what might have prompted this particular change, I'd genuinely love to hear your thoughts as well. As always, thank you for being here, thank you for your continued support, and I'll see you in the next video.